Victoria is one of the most bushfire-prone areas in the world. The state's extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and intense, which is leading to more severe bushfires that burn more land. The recent 2019-20 bushfire season had a devastating impact on human life, wildlife, flora and infrastructure, and adversely affected Victoria's economy. While it is not possible to eliminate the threat of bushfires, government plays a key role in reducing the risks they pose to people, property and the environment. This audit looked at whether responsible agencies are working together effectively to reduce Victoria's bushfire risk. The audited agencies, particularly the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, or DELP, and the Country Fire Authority, the CFA, are collaborating to reduce the risks that bushfires pose to life, property and the environment. However, there is insufficient information available to understand the effectiveness and impacts of agencies' risk reduction activities. Current modelling limitations and lack of reporting on non-burn and private land-based risk reduction activities inhibit continuous improvement, limit community understanding of performance in reducing risk, and constrain DELP and government's ability to make better informed investment decisions to further reduce risk. Reducing risk across the state also requires a stronger focus on, and allocation of resources to, treating private land to complement that applied to public land. We examined DELP, Parks Victoria, the CFA, Emergency Management Victoria and Energy Safe Victoria, or ESV. We also looked at 3 local councils, the City of Whittlesea and East Gippsland and Murrindindi Shire Councils. We looked at 3 key areas of risk reduction: fuel management, including DELP's performance target for reducing bushfire risk and its risk reduction strategies, Victoria's land use planning system, and the Powerline Bushfire Safety Program, or PBSP. We did not examine frontline bushfire response or emergency management. Fuel management is a major part of DELP's bushfire risk management strategy. It reduces the intensity of fires and makes them easier for firefighters to control. Fuel management treatments include planned burning and non-burn treatments, such as grass slashing, ploughing and using herbicides. Following the Black Saturday bushfires in 2009, DELP adopted a hectare-based target for its planned burn program. In 2015, the Inspector-General for Emergency Management recommended replacing this target with a risk reduction target. While the hectare-based target focused on annually burning a minimum number of hectares, the risk reduction target prioritises burns in areas that will reduce the most risk. DELP used the modelling tool Phoenix Rapid Fire to inform its advice to government about the selection of residual risk reduction target. It did this by modelling 7 different planned burn scenarios. While some of the scenarios maximised the number of hectares treated, others prioritised risk reduction, which DELP measured by the number of houses that planned burning would save during a simulated bushfire. Scenarios that prioritised risk reduction outperformed those that prioritised hectares burned. DELP advised the government that it could reduce Victoria's bushfire risk by 30% with $50 million of annual funding, which was how much it received for planned burning at the time. However, DELP did not communicate that its modelling showed it could achieve greater risk reduction with further investment. It also did not explain Phoenix Rapid Fire's limitations. The government's Safer Together policy, which it established to implement the Inspector-General's 2015 recommendations, commits to holistically measuring the impact of planned burning and non-burn risk treatments by the end of 2020. DELP and its partner agencies are not on track to meet this commitment because they do not measure the impact of non-burn treatments. DELP advised us that it will develop the capability to do this by late 2021. Victoria's current residual risk level meets the government's target to reduce the state's residual risk level to 70% or less. DELP's reporting against its performance target, set in Budget Paper 3, does not give government agencies, the government, or the public a complete understanding of the impact of its risk reduction activities. This is because DELP's non-burn treatments are excluded from this reporting, and the reported result reflects the combined impact of DELP's planned burned activities, together with fuel reduction caused by bushfires, which is not attributable to DELP. During this audit, DELP developed a method to separate the effects of its planned burn program from bushfires and intends to start reporting this separately in future reports. DELP also does not clearly report on how its planned burn program impacts native flora and fauna, and neither DELP nor the CFA assess and consider the cost-effectiveness of their risk reduction activities. While DELP is responsible for assessing and reducing bushfire risk on public land, the CFA and councils do so for private land, which makes up 60% of Victoria. Private land usually poses a lower bushfire risk because it is often cleared for crops, grazing or building development. Despite this, it is difficult for the CFA and councils to assess and address bushfire risk on private land due to staff capacity and capability limitations and their lack of data and access to modelling tools. In addition, there is a lack of focus on risks present on private land in DELP and the CFA's operational planning, which creates a gap in understanding risk across the state. We made 14 recommendations to DELP and the CFA on fuel management. 2 to improve risk modelling and measuring and reporting performance. 5 on taking more holistic, complete and consistent approaches to planning to address risk. 5 on better documenting and collecting data associated with risk treatments and evaluating impacts. And 2 to support improved risk assessment on private land. Victoria's bushfire history shows a strong link between property loss and loss of life. For this reason, planning and building controls play a key role in reducing bushfire risk by controlling where people can live and the construction standards they must build to. In 2017, the government changed the Victorian planning provisions to improve strategies for planners to identify, assess and manage bushfire hazards. These changes prioritise protecting human life by directing population growth and development to low-risk locations, by ensuring people have safe access to areas where they can shelter from bushfires, and by considering bushfire risks during all stages of the planning process. DELP mapped Victoria's high bushfire risk areas into 2 categories: bushfire-prone areas, or BPAs, which cover most of regional Victoria, and bushfire management overlays, or BMOs, which cover the highest risk areas. In BPAs, a minimum construction standard applies to all new building work, including work on existing buildings. In BMOs, developments and extensions require a planning permit in addition to a building permit and are subject to further planning controls, such as the required construction standard and defendable space, which is land that needs to be maintained to provide a break between a building and vegetation. DELP's statewide mapping of BPAs and BMOs gives councils a consistent way to assess bushfire risk and inform land use planning decisions. However, properties that predate contemporary planning and building standards do not benefit from the updated controls. This is because BMO and BPA requirements only apply to new developments or extensions to existing properties. Not all audited councils routinely check that landowners continue to meet their planning permit conditions. This creates a risk that landowners never meet the BMO conditions set by their permit, or do not maintain BMO standards for the life of their property, or that they may not be aware of BMO conditions when buying a property. DELP does not monitor, evaluate or report on how effective planning and building controls are at reducing bushfire risks. As a result, it is unclear how changes to Victoria's planning provisions have impacted the state's bushfire risk level. We made one recommendation to DELP about improving awareness of planning controls among property owners and occupiers. Power line faults have started many of Victoria's major bushfires. The PBSP is a $750 million 10-year program designed to reduce this risk. We focused on two of the largest PBSP projects, the $500 million Network Assets Project, or NAP, and the $200 million Powerline Replacement Fund, or PRF. On Black Saturday, Powerline controls did not operate fast enough to prevent faults from starting some fires. Under the NAP, electricity distribution businesses are installing two types of protection devices in high bushfire risk areas: rapid earth fault current limiters, or REVCALs, and automatic circuit reclosers, or ACRs. REVCALs operate like a safety switch. When a power line connects with the ground, they lower the voltage on the faulty line almost instantaneously. ACRs reduce the risk of fire starting by limiting the number of times a power line attempts to re-establish connection after a fault. Under the NAP, electricity distribution businesses are replacing manually operated ACRs with new generation ACRs that can be controlled remotely. The PRF is a government-funded project to cover, insulate, bury or remove high-voltage bare wire power lines in 11 of Victoria's 33 highest bushfire risk areas. It has also funded individuals who own private poles and low-voltage power lines to bury them underground. Victoria's decision to use REVCALs to reduce bushfire risk is a world first. We found that DELP selected technology for the NAP based on comprehensive research and trials conducted by external experts. DELP also targeted treatments to areas where power lines were more likely to start bushfires with severe consequences. It prioritised these highest risk areas to achieve the greatest benefit with the available funding. The PRF was completed in March 2020, ahead of its January 2021 deadline, and at a cost of $188 million. The NAP is still ongoing. Electricity distribution businesses are making good progress against the government's legislative timeframes to install REVCALs to 45 zone substations. However, high voltage customers, who are commercial or government electricity users, are expected to cause some delays. This is because some of these customers have not completed the necessary upgrades to make their equipment REVCAL ready. The NAP's final costs are estimated to be $747 million, which is almost $250 million above the original estimate. This is mostly due to challenges that distribution businesses have experienced while installing the new technology. Victorian electricity consumers of participating distribution businesses are covering the costs of the NAP through their electricity bills. When the NAP is completed in April 2023, REVCAL technology is expected to reduce the risk of power lines starting bushfires across the state by 33.7% compared to modelled risk levels without this intervention. The PRF has reduced the risk of power lines starting bushfires by 98 to 99% on treated power lines. On completion of the NAP, all high-voltage power lines in the 33 highest risk areas will also benefit from REVCAL protection, reducing the risk level by 58.6% in these areas. Due to limited funding, DELP was only able to insulate or bury 41% of the high-voltage bare wire power lines in 11 of the 33 highest bushfire risk areas. Legislation requires electricity distribution businesses to bury remaining bare wire power lines in all of these areas at the end of their life. Based on their current replacement rate, DELP and Energy Safe Victoria estimate that this will take approximately 30 to 50 years to complete, which they consider too slow to reduce the remaining risk. RevCals were operating at 19 zone substations on 17 total fireban days during the 2019-20 bushfire season. Across these days, RevCals were activated 49 times by electrical faults. 24 of these faults would have likely started a bushfire. Despite these faults, no fires started on RevCal protected networks. The RevCals potentially prevented ignitions at a time when Victoria was enduring catastrophic bushfire activity. While DELP has comprehensive internal reporting, its public reporting on the program's cost, activities and outcomes has been limited. During our audit in August 2020, DELP released its first public report covering 2012 to 19. We made 2 recommendations to DELP on the PBSP. One on improving the PBSP's transparency by publicly reporting on activities, costs and outcomes, and one on addressing the remaining risk of bare wire power lines. For more information about this audit, please visit our website at audit.vic.gov.au.